Home. Before history was etched in stone, it was marked in flesh and fire by those who plummeted from the sky. Beings of light who embraced the shadows, whose transgressions would ultimately shape the destiny of the world. This narrative unfolds their trespass, the colossal monstrosities they unleashed, and the earth they reduced to desolation. There existed an epoch veiled in enigma, a time predating even the era of Noah, a forgotten age whose echoes still murmur across creation. In that bygone past, a darkness descended upon the world, silent and inexorable. In the heavens, the sons of God, the angelic watchers, guardians of humankind, turned their inquisitive gaze. And it was then that they beheld the daughters of men. Their allure was intoxicating, bordering on the forbidden. A solitary notion, simple yet corrosive, took root within their hearts. Curiosity morphed into desire, desire into rebellion. And with that singular act, the heavens fractured. Eternity became unstable, and the world experienced a chaos that no mortal would ever erase from memory. Giants roamed the earth. Cities arose constructed of iron and blood, and the reverberation of that original sin echoed through subsequent generations. Everything we recognize today was born from the specter of those who dared to defy the divine realm. Beneath a somber sky burdened with an unspoken fate, Samjaza, the chieftain of the fallen angels, convened 200 of his brethren atop the snow-capped peaks of Mount Hermon. The frigid air stung their faces, but the sheer magnitude of the moment overshadowed all else. Time appeared to pause, awaiting the oath that was on the verge of being sealed. Samjaza, his voice resolute, began to speak. "I fear I will be the only one to bear the consequences for this grave transgression." A weighty silence ensued, broken by the voice of another angel. "Nay, Samjaza, we shall all pledge. We shall all commit to this path. What has transpired cannot be undone." With an unwavering gaze, Samjaza concluded, "Then so be it. The destiny of us all is sealed. The fall is inevitable." With that declaration, they swore, a vow that would irrevocably transform their very essence and damn them for eternity. The pact was sealed with the unyielding strength of a promise no force could break, and there was no prospect of turning back. They were committed not merely to the fall itself, but to the profound repercussions that would inevitably accompany it. And thus they descended, not with the delicate grace of angelic wings, but with the brutal force of an inescapable plummet. They fell like incandescent stars, streaking across the heavens and leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. As their feet made contact with the earth, the very ground seemed to shudder beneath the impact, for their forms radiated with a terrifying, unholy light. The silent cosmos appeared to momentarily freeze in place. Mortals, upon witnessing those radiant, colossal figures, stood paralyzed, unable to fully grasp the magnitude of the spectacle unfolding before them. And then, with a voice imbued with dark power, Samjaza spoke, addressing his brethren and the mortals gathered around him. "What has been done cannot be undone. We are the fallen, and the world will forever be irrevocably altered." With the potency of their fiery essence, the fallen angels took human wives, and with them, they conceived children. But these offspring were no ordinary children. They were not mere mortals. These children were born with an ancient, insatiable hunger in their eyes and a power that shattered the natural laws of existence. They grew to immense stature, their bodies reaching heights that blotted out the very sun. They were the Nephilim, the giants, descendants of a pact that sealed their fate and the destiny of the world. The burden of their fall lay heavily upon them. The world would never revert to its former state. Their presence was a living, palpable terror that spread like a shadow over every human tribe. Children of fallen angels and mortal women, these creatures possessed strength and cunning that far surpassed human limitations. They became kings and tyrants, gods and monsters, legendary heroes in the eyes of some, but living nightmares to all. Initially, their hunger was instinctive, a natural drive. Animals and fruits of the earth were devoured without mercy, but their appetite grew, becoming insatiable and boundless. Soon, nothing that nature offered could satiate their ravenous desires. Their gaze turned towards humanity itself. The hunt commenced, and with it, the world writhed in unimaginable agony. The very earth, corrupted, began to spawn horrors, deformed creatures, abominations that should never have come into existence. Impossible hybrids born from the mingling of species separated by divine decree. Every cry of anguish, every human tear seemed to fertilize the soil with the corruption that spread like a virulent plague. And the Watchers, Their celestial fathers, witnesses and architects of this unfolding chaos, shared with humanity forbidden secrets, knowledge meant to remain locked away within the celestial realm. Adazel, a prince among the fallen, taught men the art of forging weapons, cutting swords, impenetrable shields, instruments of war that would shape kingdoms built upon blood. Others imparted dark astrology, magic, and spells that distorted the soul and warped the will. Humanity, intoxicated by this newfound knowledge, descended into a profound state of corruption. Violence ceased to be a form of punishment. It became a celebrated ritual. Chaos reigned supreme, becoming the new law of the land. Even nature itself groaned in protest. Darkened skies concealed the sun, and the ailing earth exhibited signs of a disease as ancient as the mountains, a rot that stretched from the very heart of life to its deepest roots. It was the dawn of an age of shadow, where the divine and the mortal collided, and the world, for a fleeting moment, experienced a horror that would never be completely forgotten. In the abyss of decay, when humanity's hopes appeared to be extinguished like a fragile candle in the wind, a divine sign emerged, a voice, powerful and unmistakable, rising from the chaos with the weight of an ancient promise. God, in his infinite wisdom and unwavering justice, sent forth a man. Not just any man, but one specifically chosen. One who walked side by side with the Creator without fear or hesitation. His name was Enoch. In a land ravaged by the corruption and tyranny of the Nephilim, where the darkness of oppression was absolute, Enoch's voice resonated with the force of thunder in the silent desert. He feared neither the giants who dominated the world nor the fallen angels who, with their wicked influence, had corrupted creation itself. He possessed unwavering faith that the Almighty guided him, and with that profound confidence, he cast his message to the winds. "O children of heaven, you who abandoned the glorious home from whence you came, you who defiled the earth, know this. The Most High sees all, and he will come to render judgment." Enoch's words were like a prophecy inscribed in fire, echoing through the mountains and across the vast expanse of the desert. But only a select few souls heeded his dire warning. The world scoffed. The masses mocked the aged prophet, blinded to the impending storm that loomed like an endless shadow. God's judgment, however, had already commenced. The giants persisted in their tyranny, erecting their impossible towers, which stood as towering monuments to their arrogance. Their laws, written in blood, were brutally enforced, and humanity, lost and without direction, furiously imitated the cruelty they witnessed. Enoch, his heart heavy with the profound sorrow of a world in ruins, walked among the ashes of the cities the Nephilim had decimated. He spoke of the visions he had witnessed, visions that burned vividly within his mind. Visions of a future where everything would be consumed by fire, where destruction would be total and irreversible. "I have seen the end. The mountains will melt like wax. The stars will fall from the heavens, and the armies of the Lord will descend in fire and vengeance." As these words reached the ears of the fallen angels, who until that moment had believed themselves invulnerable, an emotion they had never before experienced overwhelmed them. Fear. For the first time, they trembled. They who had fallen from grace through pride now approached Enoch, their once radiant forms now somber and gripped by the dread of what was to come. "Prophet, intercede for us. Take our petition to the Creator. We beseech his mercy." Enoch, burdened with the weighty responsibility of a divine messenger, carried their petitions to the very throne of God. But the time for mercy had long since passed. Judgment was sealed, and the scales of justice were about to irrevocably tip against the fallen angels. When Enoch returned, his face was a mask of profound sadness, evidence that the fate of those who had rebelled was irrevocably sealed. He looked upon the fallen angels, who were now in a state of utter despair. "There will be no peace for you. Your children, the giants, will be destroyed before your very eyes, and you will be forced to witness the downfall of all that you have created." These words, like a thunderbolt, shattered the silence that enveloped them. The power of what had been spoken seemed to reverberate throughout the land as the heavens prepared to carry out the sentence that had long been foretold. In the expansive land where the giants held dominion, their colossal figures marched like invincible gods, arrogant in their power and blinded by their overconfidence. They believed themselves to be untouchable, indifferent to the whispers of approaching death. Their hearts were so numbed by violence and destruction that fate seemed like a distant, irrelevant concept. But time, like a relentless current, is unforgiving, and their end was drawing nearer than they could have ever imagined. On the horizon, a dark omen began to take form. As the world descended into the darkness of decay, a new figure emerged from the shadows. A simple man, his soul scarred by the weight of hardship, without fame or power, but possessing something far more valuable, purity of heart. His calloused hands bore witness to the hard work and humble life he had chosen. His name was Noah. He was no hero of grand stature, but his soul resonated like a beacon of light amidst the encroaching darkness. His eyes, still shining with hope, reached towards the heavens, even as the earth was consumed by evil. Noah walked alone, yet he was never truly alone. For while the giants were consumed by their wars and their cities crumbled to dust, Noah walked with God. He was the last flickering flame of justice in a lost generation, a generation sinking into wickedness, corruption, and unbridled violence. One night, when the wind seemed to carry the weight of the entire world, something incredible transpired. A radiant light descended from the sky, not with the scorching heat of destruction, but with a gentle fire that would not consume. It was a divine presence, a force that filled Noah's soul with an intoxicating awe, yet also with a supernatural calm. The air grew thick, charged with an undeniable power that could not be challenged. Behold, the end of all flesh has come before me. The earth is filled with violence, and because of this, I will destroy it, along with the earth itself. Build yourself an ark. Noah, filled with holy fear, did not question. There was no room for doubt. The vision was crystal clear. With steady hands and a resolute heart, he commenced construction. The sound of the hammer striking the woodwork was the only sound that could be heard. It was a solitary rhythm, but one charged with profound meaning. Each hammer stroke was a direct response to the chaos that was unfolding around him. The people, witnessing his work progress, gathered to mock him. Look at the old man. He is building a ship on dry land. Has the sun fried his brain? Where is this flood he speaks of? But Noah did not respond to their taunts. His answer lay in the wood he cut, in the ark that continued to rise. He remained unshaken, for he knew that he was accomplishing something far greater than himself. As Noah continued his arduous work, the heavens shifted in a spectacle of divine forces. The archangels received orders from on high, and their wings stretched towards earth. Raphael, the celestial warrior, was dispatched to capture Azazel, the ringleader of the rebellion that had corrupted earth's creatures. In the deepest recesses of the mountains, Raphael found him, a being of immense power and utter desolation. With chains forged of spiritual fire, he bound Azazel and cast him into an abyss of eternal darkness, where he would remain until the very end of time. Meanwhile, Gabriel, the divine messenger, had been entrusted with a different mission. He was sent to sow discord among the giants so that their destruction would come not only from external forces, but from within their own hearts. He whispered words of distrust, envy, and hatred until the clans, once united in alliance, began to turn against one another. The final war of the giants was on the verge of erupting, a war without mercy and without victors. Noah, oblivious to these celestial machinations, continued his work diligently. He understood that the ark was more than just a structure. It was a promise, a silent vow of survival. A promise that, despite the chaos unfolding all around them, there was still a chance to salvage what remained of purity, of life, and of hope. And so, as the world around him crumbled into ruin, Noah continued to hammer, one beat at a time, like the sound of the last echo of justice in a world that had lost its way. And then God spoke, for the last time, "Come into the ark, you and all your household." And they obeyed without hesitation. From the four corners of the world, the impossible began to occur. From the sky, birds with powerful wings descended in flocks, slicing through the air like living arrows, landing in pairs before the ark. From the fields and forests, entire herds moved as one, like a river of flesh and bone, guided by an inaudible command. From the deserts, reptiles slithered through the dust, obeying a call that only they could perceive. Even the wild beasts, lions, bears, elephants, and creatures that had never known peace marched side by side without conflict, without fear. On the seventh day, Noah and his family entered the ark. And then, something supernatural occurred. The gigantic door, far too heavy for any human hand to lift, was closed by God himself. And there was silence, a terrible, expectant silence. Then the heavens underwent a profound transformation. The clouds swelled like black walls, towering one over the other until they completely obscured all light. The sun was blotted out from existence. Lightning split the heavens, not as mere flashes, but as flaming swords ripping through the firmament. Each lightning strike felt as though the very fabric of creation was being torn asunder. A deep sound, almost a groan, echoed from the depths of the world. The earth wept, and then came the roar, a deafening sound, like 1,000 storms unleashed simultaneously. The fountains of the great deep burst open. The womb of the earth spewed forth rivers of unbridled fury. The windows of heaven were thrown wide open, and from on high descended endless curtains of water. They were not mere drops, but liquid walls, heavy and solid as a veil of death that stretched across everything. The world, gripped by terror, ran in desperation. Men cried out for salvation. The Nephilim, those haughty giants, sons of corruption, retreated to the highest mountain peaks, confident that their height and strength would save them. One of them, perhaps Gilgamesh himself, raised his voice against the thunder of a roar of fury, a direct challenge to the Creator. But the sky did not respond with words, only with the deafening thunder of a lightning bolt that shattered the heavens, and with the relentless waters which rose inexorably, crushing everything in their path. The mountains, once secure and unyielding, became fleeting islands, and even they disappeared beneath the relentless advance of the floodwaters. A colossal vortex swallowed giants whole. Their roar, a mixture of despair and defiance, was lost in the surging foam. Their voices, united with those of men, formed a single, unified scream, a symphony of terror, which was soon silenced by the rising tide. For 40 days and 40 nights, the world was undone. The forests were uprooted. The temples and palaces of kings were swept away like grains of sand. No flesh survived. No human voice remained to be heard. Creation was purified by the tears of divine judgment. And when the roar finally ceased, there was only the sound of the waters, covering everything from the deepest valley to the highest mountain peak. And there, in the midst of an endless, horizonless ocean, a single wooden boat floated, small, solitary, yet holding within it the promise of life. The end had arrived. The end had indeed arrived. The waters, which for so long had covered the earth like a veil of judgment, began to recede. The roar of the abysses quieted. The sea that had swallowed cities and mountains now, little by little, revealed the ground beneath. And the ark, that immense vessel made by the hands of an obedient man, rested gently on the mountains of Ararat. The silence that followed was profound, almost sacred. It was as if all of creation, renewed and purified, awaited the next act. Then the wood creaked. The door was opened. Noah, along with his family, descended from the ark. His feet, which for so long had only known the feel of planks and the rolling of the waves, touched solid ground once more. The air was fresh, charged with the promise of new life. Noah looked around. No empire, no city, no throne of kings remained standing, only rocks, newly sprouting trees, and the vast, expansive horizon. And there, in his simplicity, he erected something grand, an altar, not of gold, not of marble or precious stones, but of ordinary rocks collected from the still damp soil. An altar of gratitude. The fire was lit. Smoke rose into the heavens. It wasn't just ash. It was an invisible chant, a prayer etched upon the wind. And in response, the heavens opened in a burst of color. An arch appeared, majestic, spanning across the firmament. It was a rainbow. Not simply light refracted by rain, but the Creator's own signature. A pact, a solemn promise. God's voice echoed through eternity. Never again shall water destroy all life. It was the covenant of mercy. Years turned into centuries. Generations flourished. The land teemed with people, kingdoms, and diverse cultures. The soil bore abundant fruit. Cities rose from the earth. Commerce thrived. Laughter echoed once more. The world healed. But not every scar disappeared entirely. In the silence of the new land, ancient memories still whispered. Stories were told around campfires. Legends of dark times when giants walked among men. And they were not merely legends. The Anakim, the Rephaim, the Emim emerged in the land of Canaan, people of immense stature, warriors whose battle cries made even the bravest tremble. Their swords were like tree trunks, their shields mobile walls, their footsteps like thunder. And so, the echo of the ancient Nephilim seemed to have returned. When the servant of the Most High, Moses, led Israel to the borders of the Promised Land, he sent 12 men to scout out the territory. They traversed fertile valleys, saw fortified cities, immense walls, and vineyards so vast that a single bunch of grapes required 2 men to carry. but they also saw the giants. And when they returned, 10 of them spoke in trembling, fearful voices. The land devours its inhabitants. We saw the children of Anak. Beside them, we were like grasshoppers, and that's how we looked in their eyes. The people wept. Murmurs of despair spread throughout the camp. Faith wavered, but 2 men refused to succumb to fear, Joshua and Caleb. They raised their voices against the terrified crowd. Do not be afraid. The Lord is with us. These giants are nothing more than bread for us. They will fall before the hand of the Most High. Words of faith against an ocean of fear. And so it came to pass. When the time was right, under Joshua's command, Israel marched forward. The trumpets echoed through the valleys. The dust of the road rose under thousands of marching feet. They were not marching for glory, nor for a king's crown. They were marching for the promise. The cities of the giants rose like towering walls against the sky. High-walled cities, colossal fortresses, gates so high they seemed like portals to another dimension. But no wall was greater than the arm of the living God. The giants roared in defiance. Their spears were like towers, their cries like thunder. But before the Lord, their strength was nothing but dust. One by one, they fell. The terror of men was conquered by the power of the promise. And then, the last shadow lifted as the last of the Rephate kings reigned in Bashan. His name was already a legend. His fame preceded his very presence. They said his bed was made of iron, colossal in size, so immense it seemed like a monument to an ancient god. His size, his strength, his very existence were a challenge to the divine order. Og was the final echo of the Nephilim, the last cry of a world that had resisted divine will. And Israel stood before him. The human heart might waver, fear might whisper, but the promise was greater. God's voice still guided his people. And before the Lord, no giant remained standing. Og fell. Bashan was taken. The shadow of the past was being burned away by the light of unwavering faith. But the final echo, the greatest challenge of all, was yet to come. Among the Philistines, a champion arose. Goliath of Gath, a nearly 10-foot-tall mountain of a man, clad in bronze armor that gleamed like a cruel sun. For 40 days, he defied Israel. Today I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man so we can fight each other. Why do you cower in fear like cowards? All of Israel trembled with fear. Not even King Saul dared to face him in battle. But then, from the sheepfolds, a boy emerged. A shepherd armed only with a staff, a slingshot, and 5 smooth stones gathered from a brook. His name was David. The battlefield fell silent. On one side stood Goliath, a living weapon of bronze and mockery. On the other stood a simple shepherd boy with nothing but faith in his heart. Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? Goliath bellowed. Come here, boy, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air. David replied, You come against me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand. The heavens watched with bated breath. The angels held their breath. The stone was released. A blur, a hiss, a sickening crack. Goliath, the great giant, the invincible champion, fell face down to the earth. The ancient fear that had haunted humanity for ages was shattered by a boy and a single stone. David rushed forward, seized the giant's massive sword, and severed his head. The Philistine army, seeing their champion fall, broke ranks and fled in terror. The nightmare was finally over. Under David's reign, the last of the giants were hunted down and destroyed. Ishbi-benob, Saph, Lami, the last remnants of a cursed lineage, fell one by one. They were not slain by angels or demigods, but by mortal men, armed with something the giants could never comprehend: unwavering faith. The age of shadows had passed. The memory of the Nephilim became a cautionary tale, a story whispered through time, a reminder that even the most terrifying darkness can be overcome. It is not strength that conquers giants, but faith.